There's a woman sitting at her desk at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. The office is dim. Most of the overhead lights have gone off automatically, and the ones that are still on are the small task lamps over a few empty desks. Almost everybody else has gone home. The HVAC system is making the soft, low sound it makes after hours. The cleaning crew has not arrived yet. The whole floor is in that particular kind of quiet that office buildings have at the end of a long day. The quiet that comes after motion, not before it. She is not on her phone. She has not put on music. She has a document open on her screen. It is a difficult document. Maybe a report, maybe a proposal, maybe a section of a manuscript, or a piece of code that has been resisting her for 2 days, or a long memo somebody asked her for last week and forgot they were going to need. It does not really matter what kind of document it is. What matters is the way she is working on it. She has been working on it in exactly this way for 3 weeks, slowly, carefully, in the kind of focused state she can only enter when the office is empty and the meetings are over and the noise of the day has died down enough for her to hear her own thinking again. She does not know it yet, but in another 2 weeks, this document will quietly change something at her company. The decision it informs will affect 1,000 people. Nobody in the meeting where it lands will know that the work happened here, alone, in the dim office, on a Tuesday night, by a woman whose name will not even be on the slide. Hold her. We are going to come back to her because I want to tell you something about the kind of work she is doing and about who has been doing it across the entire span of human history in rooms exactly like this one. This is not a story about being shy at work. This is not a story about how to network better. This is not a story about working harder. This is a story about a specific kind of work, quiet work, sustained work, the kind that happens after the meeting is over and the bright people have gone home and somebody has to actually do the thinking. There's a name for this kind of work, there's a lineage to it, there's a science underneath it, and there is something the modern world has slowly stopped knowing how to value about it, which is the reason a lot of you watching this have spent the better part of your career quietly wondering whether you were doing it wrong. I want to tell you something that I think you have needed to hear for a long time. You have not been doing it wrong. You have been doing the work nobody else in the room was built to do. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly what to call it. If you are an introvert at work, you have heard the same advice your whole career in slightly different words. Speak up more in meetings. Be more visible. Get your face in front of leadership. You need to contribute more. Don't just sit there. These instructions are almost never delivered with bad intent. They come from managers who like you, from mentors who want to help you, from performance reviews written by people who genuinely believe they are giving you a gift. The instructions are not malicious. They are the instructions of a workplace culture that has, almost entirely by accident, decided that the appearance of work is the same thing as the doing of work. It is not. There's a writer named Susan Cain. I have mentioned her before. Her book Quiet came out in 2012. One of the most quietly devastating findings she reported was this. When companies bring people together to brainstorm in groups, the standard modern energetic whiteboard and sticky note brainstorming session, those groups consistently produce fewer and lower quality ideas than the same number of people would have produced working alone, in silence, and then comparing notes afterward. Read that twice if you need to. The thing offices have been doing for 40 years to generate good thinking is, on average, worse than just letting people think. I want to tell you about the person in your office who proves this. You know exactly who they are. They are the colleague who almost never speaks in meetings. They sit with their notebook open. They take a few notes. They nod a little. They almost never volunteer an opinion in the room. And then, somehow, 2 days after the meeting, an email lands in everybody's inbox from them. A careful, written analysis of the problem, structured cleanly, with 3 options laid out and a clear recommendation. And it is better than anything that was said out loud during the meeting itself. Everybody on the team quietly relies on this colleague. They might not say so out loud. They might even, in performance review season, mark them down for not being more visible in discussions. But when the team actually needs to know what to do, it is that person's email they open first. That colleague is not failing at the meeting. They are doing a different job. They are listening for the thing nobody else is hearing. They are noticing the inconsistency in the second slide that everybody glossed over. They are running the implications of the proposal forward 3 steps in their head while the rest of the room is still on step 1. And they will deliver the answer in writing 2 days later when the work is actually done. There's a Georgetown computer science professor named Cal Newport who has a name for this kind of work. He calls it deep work. His core argument is simple: the most economically valuable cognitive work in the modern knowledge economy, the kind that produces real insight, real software, real strategy, real writing, requires sustained, undistracted concentration on a single hard problem. It cannot be done in 15-minute slices between Slack notifications. It cannot be done in a meeting. It cannot be done while also being visible. And here is the part that has been quietly bending the world for the last decade. This kind of work is getting rarer because modern workplaces shred attention into smaller and smaller pieces. And at the same time, it is getting more valuable because almost nobody can do it anymore. The people who can still do it are the people who already preferred to, who already sought the empty office at 6 p.m., who already turned off the notifications, who already instinctively protected a few hours of silence in a week, even at the cost of looking less collaborative. There's also a psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi who spent 30 years studying what he called flow, the deep time disappearing state of absorption in a hard task that produces both peak performance and peak satisfaction. Flow does not happen in a noisy room. It does not happen in a meeting. It requires silence, a clear goal, sustained attention, and uninterrupted time. The conditions for flow are the conditions introverts naturally seek. So let me say what is actually happening as plainly as I can. The introvert at work has been told their whole career to be more like the people in the room who are talking. But the work that produces the deepest results is not the work happening in the room. It is the work happening after the room empties out. It is the work that requires sustained attention, deep synthesis, and the willingness to hold a hard problem in your head across days and weeks until the answer assembles itself. That is not a smaller version of what extroverts do at work. It is a different mode of cognition entirely. It produces a different kind of output. It runs on a different timeline. And in a world drowning in noise and shallow processing, it has been quietly getting more valuable for the last 20 years while almost nobody has noticed. You have probably been doing it your whole career. You have probably been apologizing for it the whole time. In a minute, I am going to take you somewhere older than this because what I just described is not a modern productivity hack. It is not a clever new framework. It is, in fact, the oldest definition of valuable mental work in Western civilization. And it has a name that almost nobody outside of classical philosophy knows. In 1836, a young naturalist named Charles Darwin came home from a 5-year voyage around the world, settled into a country house in Kent, and began doing something almost nobody around him understood. He started taking long walks alone. There was a path on his property, a quiet looping gravel path through the trees behind his garden that he called the Sandwalk. Every day, sometimes twice a day, he walked it slowly by himself, often turning small pebbles with the tip of his cane to count laps so he would not have to think about the counting. And while he walked, he thought about finches, about barnacles, about the 8 years he was about to spend dissecting and classifying barnacles. 8 years on barnacles before he would feel ready to begin writing the book that was forming slowly in those quiet walks. The book was On the Origin of Species. It was not published until 1859, 23 years after Darwin came home from his voyage, 23 years of mostly solitary work in a country house by a man who hated dinner parties and avoided intellectual debates and rarely traveled. The most consequential scientific theory of the 19th century was built almost entirely in silence. There was another man, almost 100 years later, who did the same thing in a different field. His name was J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a professor of Old English at Oxford. He had a teaching job, 4 children, and a small house with a study in it. After the boys went to sleep, after the papers were graded, after the dinner dishes were done, he would go into the study and work for a few hours, mostly alone, on what was, by any reasonable description, a hobby. He was building languages. Then he was building a geography for those languages. Then a history for that geography. Then mythology. Then characters. Then slowly, Over the course of decades, a single novel that would eventually be split into 3 books and become The Lord of the Rings. The depth of the world is what made those books last. That depth was the residue of thousands of evenings nobody saw. This pattern is not a coincidence. It is not unique to scientists or writers or any specific kind of work. The work that lasts longest in almost any field, the work that changes something, is almost always work that required somebody somewhere to sit alone in a room for a long time and pay sustained attention to something the rest of the world was too noisy to notice. There is an ancient word for this. The Greeks had it more than 2,000 years ago. The word is skol. You already know this word, though you have probably never seen it in this form. It is the etymological root of the English word school. But here's the thing almost nobody knows about it. In ancient Greek, skol did not originally mean school. It meant leisure, specifically the leisure required for sustained intellectual work. Plato used the word, Aristotle used the word, and both of them considered skol not a lower state than busyness, but a higher one. The whole point of organizing a civilization, they argued, was to create the conditions under which a thinker could have skol, could have the uninterrupted time and quiet attention required to actually think a hard thing all the way through. The busy person, in their view, was not the productive person. The busy person was the person who had been denied skol. The busy person could not yet do the real work. The modern world has inverted this. We have decided almost without noticing that being busy means being valuable. We have decided that being quiet means being unnecessary. We have built workplaces, open offices, always on email, meetings stacked on meetings, that are essentially machines for destroying Skholē. And then we have looked at the people who naturally still seek it out, who instinctively protect a few hours of silence in a week, and we have told them they need to be more visible. This is not just wrong. It is the exact opposite of what every serious civilization in human history understood about how real work gets done. What introverts have been doing at work all along, the quiet hours, the long focus, the slow synthesis, the work after the office goes home, is not a problem to be solved. It is not a personality quirk to be managed. It is not a failure to network properly. It is skol. It is the oldest form of valuable mental work in the Western tradition. You have been doing it correctly the whole time. The workplace is the one that has been doing it wrong. If any of this is starting to give you back something you have been carrying for a long time, do me one small favor. Subscribe. Not because the algorithm needs it, because I'm going to keep making these slow ones, small ones, about the things almost nobody else is making videos about. And there's one more thing I want to give you before we end. Now I want to take you back to her, the woman at her desk at 6 p.m., the dim office, the document she has been working on for 3 weeks. You remember her. I want you to see her now with new eyes. She is not staying late because she is bad at her job. She is not staying late because she has poor time management. She is not staying late because she has nothing better to do. She is staying late because this, the empty office, the quiet, the hours without interruption, is the only time of day her brain can actually do the work she is paid to do. The meetings during the day were not her job. They were the noise around her job. The Slack messages were not her job. They were the noise around her job. The stand-ups, the syncs, the check-ins, the brainstorming sessions where the loudest people decided what to do, none of those were her job. The job was here, at 6 p.m. in the dim room, with the document open, with nobody watching. And she is not an exception. She is the rule. Charles Darwin was doing the same thing on the Sandwalk. J.R.R. Tolkien was doing the same thing in the study after his boys went to sleep. Marie Curie was doing the same thing in a shed in Paris, in the cold, alone, isolating radium from a mountain of pitch-blende ore for years before she got the result that won her a second Nobel Prize. Every careful scientist, every patient writer, every deep engineer, every quiet teacher who ever noticed the one student in the back of the room, every analyst whose written memo 3 days later changed how the whole company was thinking about the problem. They all did the same thing the woman at the desk is doing tonight. They sat alone in a room while the noisier people went home, and they paid sustained attention to something that needed it. She does not know it yet. She has been told her whole career that she needs to be more visible, more vocal, more in the room. She has spent 10 years quietly suspecting that the way she does her best work is somehow wrong. She has apologized for it in performance reviews and one on ones in her own head late at night when she has wondered if she should have been someone else. She should not have been someone else. She is in a lineage that goes back, unbroken, more than 2,000 years. She is doing the oldest form of valuable thinking in the Western tradition. The world does not currently know how to see it. That is the world's problem. It is not hers. I want you to think about your own Monday morning. You will sit in a meeting this week, maybe several of them. There will be people in those meetings who talk a lot and people who do not. And you will probably notice, and if you are watching for it now, you'll bet which of the two groups is generating the actual decisions and which group is generating the appearance of generating them. You will not say the thing you most want to say in the meeting. You will think it. You will hold it. You will go back to your desk afterward, and a few hours later, or the next day, or 3 days later, the thought will arrive, finished, and you will write it down. And the writing it down alone, in a quiet room, when the meeting is long over, that will be the work. The meeting was the noise. The thing you do alone is the work. You are allowed to know that now. So before we end, I want to give you 3 things to take with you. The first, introvert work is not a quieter version of extrovert work. It is a different mode of cognition, sustained attention, deep synthesis, long horizon thinking, and it produces a different kind of output on a different timeline. Both modes are necessary in any organization. Neither is better. But for the last 50 years, only one of them has been seen, and you have been doing the other one almost in secret. The second, you do not need to be more visible. You need to be more yourself. The work you do quietly, in the room with the door closed, is not a private hobby you do on the side of your real job. It is your real job. The visibility is downstream of the work. The work is the work. And the third, the one I want you to keep. You have spent a long time, probably most of your career, apologizing for the way you do your best work. You have tried to perform a version of contribution you were never built to perform. You can stop now. The thing the world is going to need more of in the next 20 years is not more noise. It is more of the work that gets done in the quiet room at 6 p.m. You are already doing it. Now you know what to call it. Before you go, I want to ask you something. And I do not want a clever answer. I just want you to sit with it. What is the quietest thing you have ever done at work that nobody noticed and that you secretly know was the best work you have ever done? Tell me, if you want to. Sometimes naming a piece of work like that out loud in writing to a stranger on the internet is the first time you fully receive it as yours. I am glad you stayed for this one. There are more of these coming. Slow ones, small ones, the kind nobody else is making. Until then, go back to your desk, close the door, turn the notifications off. The work that will matter most in your life is almost certainly waiting in the quiet.